Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining me again. Thanksgiving Eve. I have RBC coach Frank Lawrence, who just completed his ninth season at RBC, to talk, this past season and what the future looks like for Red Bank Catholic. Coach Lawrence, thank you for joining me today.
Oh, it's a pleasure, Nick. Nice to see you again.
Now first I want to say, RBC, you probably schedule the hardest schedule, I think, not just in the shore, probably the state. And I know last season you did similar, especially, with COVID. If a team had say one of your games got canceled, you try to schedule a pretty tough opponent to fill in there. Has that always been your mindset, getting a tough regular season schedule?
Yeah, I think it's really important for a whole bunch of reasons. One is it prepares you for postseason. Because the postseason you're always going to play some tough teams, especially as the further you go along in any of the tournaments, the teams get tougher. At least in theory they do. And the other thing is, first of all, I'm not really interested in just winning games for the sake of winning games and scheduling somebody to get a win. I want to challenge us as coaches. I want to challenge the players, and I think if you talk to our players, it's one of the reasons they come to RBC. It's a choice to come here, and one of the reasons is they know they're going to play against really good competition. And they know they're going to, go deep in tournaments, and they know that experience will help them in the future. So, look, what's the sense of playing if you're not playing some good, hard games? And to your point, I think when I looked at the schedule, so we played 20 games. I believe 12 of those games were against teams that at some point were ranked in the top 20 in the state. So that's pretty incredible when you look at that number. 12 out of 20 games, and the rest, some of the other games, they're just games we're required to schedule because of our divisional setup. So, and then who you get in the tournament, usually in the first round or two, they're not necessarily super great teams, but everybody we tried to schedule was one of the top 10.
I want to just touch on what you said, kids going and, challenge them, and challenge them, getting them ready for the future. Did have a basketball coach tell me, basically echo the same thing, saying, the wins and losses during the regular season don't matter as much. You're getting them ready for the postseason, and you're trying to get them ready for, the next level of college, because, when they're going to the RBCs for soccer, or, even for basketball, or St. John Vianney for basketball, it is to get them prepared for, the next level.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's kind of interesting. I had a conversation with another coach from outside of the area, and he was talking about, helping prepare kids for club soccer. And I said, well, I never think about that. I'm thinking about preparing them for college.
Yeah.
I mean, that's, I see that as a part of my job, it's not the only part of my job, but it's part of my job.
So win a sectional title, you defeat St. John Vianney, who, got you early in the season. What did you tell your team going into the sectional final against St. John Vianney?
It was a little hard. It wasn't hard to motivate them. I mean, they had plenty of motivation. We lost to them in the regular season. It was a PK call in the last few minutes to tie it, and then they scored in overtime. So, I think our kids felt that we were better than they were, and that we could win. Sometimes that's difficult because they're still good. They're a good team, and I knew certainly, the coaches knew they were going to come out hard and play tough, which they did. They really kind of disrupted us in the first half. There were stuff about, a lot of yelling and screaming from their fans. There was a lot of things going on, which, when we got to halftime, I remember couple minutes left in the first half, and I was just like, we just got to get these kids to halftime. You know, it's one of the things about soccer. In basketball, I would have called a timeout 5 minutes into the game. You know, without question, I would have called a timeout and said, okay, here's what we need to do. You don't get to do that in soccer. And it's really the kids have to either figure it out themselves or you got to get them to halftime, which we did. You know, we basically told them to calm down, relax, forget about all the distractions from the sidelines because none of that impacts the game. And to just move the ball a little quicker. And once we started doing that, you know, we took over in the second half, scored a couple of great goals. And, you know, to win the game. And honestly, you know, at the end of every year, you're always thinking through like games. And unfortunately for most coaches, you know, you sometimes dwell on the losses. Now that I'm as old as I am, I've gotten a little better at like not doing that so much. Which is good, you know, and for this year, I've really focused a lot on some great wins. I mean, really, that was a great win. I mean, we had to come back against a very good team, second half, score 2 goals. You know, the first one was something really kind of interesting because it's something we've worked on a lot over the previous 2 weeks in practice. You know, get deep on the sideline and drive the ball across the face of the goal and make sure we have players coming in to finish it off. And that's exactly what we did. So that kind of makes you feel good when they actually perform something that you've been working on as a coach. And then, you know, to get the game winner from a kid who scored her first career goal the game before, and she's a junior, you know, so for her to come through and score the game winner, I mean, the whole team just felt so great for her because she's a great kid, you know, never complains about anything, works hard, you know, had been consistently working hard through the season. She'd been sick for a couple of weeks, not COVID related, but she was sick and out for a couple of weeks. So, you know, when she got back, you know, she getting back into it, and for her to come out and score that game winner, I mean, it's, you know, that's a career maker really at the end of the day.
I want to touch on, you know, short conference tournament, you know, make it to the semis. The 3 of the 4 teams were, you know, Toms River North, you know, Freehold. The way to match up to get to the semis, you defeated Homedale, who, you know, the last 2 seasons, regular season, during the regular season, had your number. What did you tell the team going into that Homedale short conference game?
You know, that was kind of similar because although we lost in the regular season, we felt we almost dominated the game.
I was at that game. I agree. I thought your team definitely controlled that game.
We had the ball. If you looked at a possession stat, I bet we had it more than 60% of the time. I mean, our passing was unbelievable that day. You know, they got a goal. We had some opportunities early. We didn't get them. And that's the game. You know, that happens the most. So our kids were actually pretty confident going into that game. Kind of felt the same way. Like, we're better than them. We can beat them. And the exact same thing kind of happened. They got a goal in the first half. You know, it was kind of a more even game, I thought, at that point. But then we had 2 like just great plays by our midfielders to win a ball and kind of in one motion make a perfect pass to one of our forwards who, you know, 1-2 quick touches and bang in the back of the net. I mean, just brilliant goals, and then finish it out. And, you know, in that game, really kind of in the first 4 minutes of that game, we lost Sophia Rasiopi, who's one of our best defenders, and is very important in our attack as well. And we made a decision to put a freshman in who had never played a minute of varsity soccer. And it was, you know, it was kind of one of those things. It's like, you know, well, listen, you know, it might not work for us, but it's worth a chance, and she did a good job. I mean, she, didn't make any big mistakes, stepped up in a pretty big way. Sophia had to miss the next game as well, which was tough on her because she played for Toms River North as a freshman.
Yeah.
In the when we won it in 19. So, so here's this freshman coming through and playing. And then we also lost in that game Emily Byer, who had been doing a great job as our holding mid. She suffered a concussion. So she was out for a week. And so going into the Toms River game, we were really shorthanded. You lose a couple of starters. I don't care what team you are. And it's not like we hadn't already lost a bunch of kids at that stage. So, I think that it was just tough for us to overcome that. I'm not, Toms River North is a very good team. They played a good game. We had a couple of opportunities early to score. And I thought that if we'd done that, if we had scored, we would have won those games. But, again, it's the way it goes sometimes. If you don't take advantage of your opportunities and the other team does, then you don't win the games.
Before we, go through, some of the players on your team and the seasons they had, talk about how do you think the Shore Conference, they had the Shore Conference had, a remarkable season, and, you tweet about, the sectionals that they won this season, and, they're well represented in the final top 20 on NJ.com. What do you think, the quality of, soccer in the Shore right now?
Yeah, it's probably the highest it's been since I've been here. I mean, it's kind of an interesting dynamic. When I was first here, very few teams from the Shore were getting ranked very high by NJ.com.
Even as a couple seasons ago.
Yeah, not that long ago. I mean, it was like, I had a couple of, not arguments, but I had a couple of conversations about that with them, because I was like, I don't think you're paying attention to what's going on around here. Just look at the state tournament. Yeah. This year wasn't an aberration. Yeah. But quite frequently, this has been going on for the last 9 years that I've been around. So, and I'll tell you what changed. Number one, we had this Shore and Skylands challenge.
Yeah.
And 2 years ago, we won 6 out of 7 games.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, they had to go, wait a minute. I guess these teams are pretty good.
Yeah.
And then last year, in the COVID year, as you mentioned, we lost some games because teams had to cancel, and we went and scheduled these 3 ranked teams and beat 2 of them, and really probably should have beaten the third. And again, they look at that and they go, holy, wow, these guys are obviously pretty good. So they had to rank us. So now once you have to rank us pretty high, and then we lost to Homedale, well, you got to rank Homedale, and then you got to, so all of a sudden they came to this realization that, oh, these guys are actually good. And look, you have to win it on the field. You have to do all those kinds of things in order to prove all that. And I think we've done that, and I think, Freehold Township had the same kind of schedule we did. Really tough, hard schedule. And not afraid to go outside of the conference and schedule some tough games. And that's that's kind of what we're about.
That's the last game I want to bring up, the Freehold, that very early in the year. I think both of your teams, it was yours and I think Freehold's second game of the season. Under the lights, great atmosphere. What are your thoughts, the Frio team? Because I thought they were a very special team this year. And, before the season, I had them ranked, I think, sixth before the season because they had that heavy graduation class.
Mhm.
And, I didn't expect them, not to miss a beat, from, the previous season. What was your thoughts when you guys matched up against them?
The previous, well, of course, we didn't see them we didn't see them last year.
Yeah.
I had seen them. We didn't play them in 2019, but I watched them in the semifinals of the short conference. But I knew some of the kids who were there. And my players know all these kids because they all play together or against each other in club. So we knew going in they were going to be good. I mean, that was not a surprise to us at all. And, everybody I've talked to, I've said they're the best team we've seen all year. Wasn't any doubt in my mind that they were the best team. They had a tough loss in state finals, giving up a goal with 8 seconds left. And it's probably every coach's nightmare kind of thing. And I didn't watch the whole game, so I don't really know how close it was. But they'd been playing a lot of pretty close games the last half of the season. And, look, we gave up a penalty kick with 2.5 minutes to go in the game.
Yeah.
And that's how they tied us. We were leading most of the game. So but I remember walking off the field going, not that I felt lucky to have won that, but I was like, or to tie them, but I was like, wow, that's a great team. That game it had all the atmosphere of a championship game.
Yeah.
Both teams. I mean, if you remember looking around toward the end of that game, there were kids lying on the field all over the place.
Yeah.
Cramped up and
I remember that. Yeah.
The amount of effort that went into that game was pretty incredible. And that's what you need. That's what you need, and that's what you want in games at the end of the day.
We'll start going through your roster, but first, before the season starts, Abby Naj, got hurt in the off season, a key midfielder to your team. What kind of adjustments and what did it mean, losing one of your senior leaders, for the season?
It was tough when she let me know back in, I think, February. It's just kind of one of those things you shake your head and go, I can't believe it. First of all, she's a great kid.
Yeah.
I mean, you know her, you've interviewed her. Just a fantastic kid. And a real kind of a quiet leader, but a real
leads by example, basically.
Very positive on the field. And I really thought that as great a player as she was, we were going to miss that.
Yeah.
As much as anything. So we only had 3 seniors, and you lose one of them. That's a lot. And they were 3 really key parts of it. You have the goaltender, who's always a key player, the engine of the midfield, and your leading scorer. So, so losing her was, I'm spending now several months thinking about what am I doing about this, and we had a player who hadn't played a lot of varsity for us. Was going to be a junior. Great athlete, good player, smart kid. And we thought, you know what? I think she can fit in that role. In June, she tore her ACL.
Oh.
So now your number one option to replace her is no longer there. So now it's plan C kind of thing. We had tried out a bunch of kids in that role. Really we had to kind of do a couple of kids there. So we went through a bunch. We had Reese Zimmerman, who played in the early games, we thought was doing a really good job. But she had some problems with her knee, not an ACL kind of tear, but she has some problems that forced her to stop playing. Probably about a third of the way into the season. So now we're really kind of looking at, all right, now what are the options? So we basically started rotating a couple of sophomores there, Mia Gonzalez and Emily Byer. And they both had to grow into the role a little. I mean, let's say that neither one of them, Emily had played a little bit of varsity as a freshman. Mia had not played at all because of COVID. She was, we had separated the JV and didn't want to intermingle just in case anything happened. So she was a kid who would have gotten some looks under normal circumstances.
Yeah.
And, once they kind of got over their initial nerves and made the few mistakes that they're going to make, and then realize, look, I'm not yelling at you for making a mistake. You got to learn how to play. So once we did that, they both just grew tremendously in that role. Emily, and then what happened was Emily really showed that in the kind of holding mid role, she was really good, which kind of freed us up to take Mia and Ashley Inacio, another sophomore, and kind of rotate the three of those kids through two positions in the midfield, and also give Noelle Powell's a little bit of a break. Because it's a hard job, and getting a few minutes off here and there has value. So I mean, that was really kind of what we were doing through most of the second half of the season. Again, we lost Emily and Emily was hurt at the beginning of the season. One of the reasons she didn't kind of fit into that initially was she hurt her ankle. She was in a boot for about 6 weeks, whole preseason, first couple of weeks of the season. And it was like, she wasn't eligible to play. She wasn't cleared to play until the first Vienna game, which was about the 5th game of the year, I think. Yeah. So, and then right after that, we started getting her on the field, and, she performed really well for us. And then she gets the, concussion against Homedale. Ashley went through some illness issues, and then had to quarantine for COVID for a while. And it was just like, everywhere I looked, we kept losing players. And we had Eva Carton, who was starting forward for us in the first, 4 or 5 games. She had recovered. She was just back after a year from an ACL tear. And she had to go back in for some a minor procedure about midway through the season. So we lost her. So you start like counting them all up. It's actually, I was just looking at the picture from after the Vienna win for the sectional. And I'm just kind of counting. I'm like, I think I got to 7 knee injuries. Yeah, it's a lot.
Do you've been coaching a while. I mean, compared to when I was in school, it seems like a lot more injuries today than there was 15, 20 years ago.
I think there's a lot more than there were 5 years ago.
Okay.
I mean, to be honest with you, I'd probably coached for over 15 years before I had my first ACL tear. And that was 7 or 8 years ago. So, having talked to a bunch of other coaches and trainers and athletic directors, I mean, I think there's a huge overuse problem.
Yeah. I mean, club programs, 12 months a year,
12
basically.
months a year. And there's this whole culture of, well, there's some other kid out there working hard, so you have to be out there working hard. Yeah. And they don't recognize, and first of all, they're very young.
Yeah.
These kids, 13, 14 years old, are getting tears.
Yeah.
That they are young, that they're still growing and developing, and how important rest is.
Yeah.
I mean, your body has to rest in order to gain strength and to be able to perform at a high level. I preach it constantly, but I know I might as well be, telling the waves to stop coming in because, you know, you just can't seem to get through to them and their parents that
Mhm.
a
Need
day
to-
of rest is
That's good.
really
Yeah.
important.
Um, I want to talk, your two forwards, senior Morgan Kupo and, sophomore Maya King, both had finished with 16 goals. Um, First Morgan, always, all 4 years, up there with the best, goal scorers in the Shore. What is it, her graduating and how big of an effect is that going to have, losing one of RBC's all-time leading, scores. I know
Yeah,
throughout the years she kept moving up the scoring list,
yeah.
and what she meant to the program over the 4 years.
You know, it's kind of incredible what she has accomplished. I mentioned this to somebody the other day that when you start getting up high on the RBC lists, it's a little bit like the Yankees, and you get mentioned at the same time with Ruth and Gehrig. Because RBC, in the Shore certainly has been the dominant program since day one,
Mhm.
and they've had some incredible goal scorers in their time. And for her, she finished fifth all time in both goals and scoring. Um, and when you look at who's ahead of her, there's only one who played in the last 20 years. And soccer has changed,
Yeah.
especially girls soccer has changed a lot. I can remember those days because, I was around coaching in the 90s and the competition wasn't anything like what it is today. So a team like RBC would, and through no fault of their own,
Put up
play a
6, 7 goals.
schedule where
Yeah.
they're winning 7-8-0
Yeah.
every game. And
Yeah.
that gives kids an opportunity to score a
Correct.
lot of goals.
Mhm.
And I'm not one to leave somebody out there to pad stats.
Mhm.
In Morgan's best year, I don't know if she ever scored 3 goals in one game. It's just not. This year she scored 4 in one, and it's only because she scored 2 in about 30 seconds, and I couldn't get her off the field fast enough.
Was that the
So,
Donovan game?
no,
No.
no, that wasn't the Donovan game. That's just a regular
Oh.
season game. I
Okay.
honestly don't remember who it was against. She'd give me some looks when I take her off, but I'm just not. It's not. I'd always say to her, "Look, I need you for the next game. Save
Yeah.
a couple goals for the next game," kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, if you look at her since she came to RBC, there's been 3 short conference tournaments. We finished runner-up, won it, and got to the semis. We won our division twice, and we won 2 state sectionals. That's a pretty good record for anybody. And those teams, while she's been here, won over 75% of their games. And that's pretty darn good.
Yeah.
By any measure. And the interesting thing to me is in the tournaments, these last 2 tournaments, she wasn't trying to score as much, but she was doing everything else to help us win the game. She's coming back and winning balls in midfield. She defended on every corner kick, on every free kick, and made a lot of really good plays in that role. Had a couple big assists, so she was contributing in different ways. And I think that's an amazing transformation for a kid who was known as a goal scorer to kind of recognize she needed to put that aside a little bit because she's getting double and triple teamed every time she touches the ball. So she was smart enough to realize, okay, now I got to do some other things to help us win the games, and she did. And I'm really super proud of her for doing that. You know, I know we're going to have some good players coming in. Is anybody going to come in and do that? Who knows? I didn't realize she was going to do that when she came in. Although I have a very clear recollection of her first day I ever saw her, on a field, knowing this kid's going to be special. Now, did I know she was going to do that much? No, but you could see it right away, and so we'll see. Now, the good news is we have Maya, who took a big step forward.
Yes.
From her freshman year, where she was a kid who came in off the bench and scored some goals. I think she only had 4 goals as a freshman, to scoring 16, some of which were really pretty big game.
Yeah.
Pretty big game goals. Her improvement from freshman to sophomore year was pretty dramatic. I remember we sit down and talk to each kid after the end of the season to talk about, what do you need to do and all that. Remember the conversation we had with her, and she did everything we asked her to do, and it showed. And she probably doesn't get quite the recognition she deserves. There's a couple of problems with that. She plays with Morgan, which, is always going to, get a lot of attention for people. And in our division, our little A Central division had 3 state finalists in it, 2 of whom won state championships, and had a lot of seniors, both Shore and Homedale, a bunch of seniors. And then you have Rumson, who also had
a couple senior goal
scorers as well.
Yeah.
So it's harder to get recognition when you're in that kind of realm. So, but she, really stepped up. My expectation is she's going to take another step forward next year, because she's that kind of kid. She will work hard, and she will improve in the areas she needs to improve. But we also have coming back Gianna Romeo, who had I think 12 goals.
Yes.
So that was that kind of front 3, which you get that much production out of your front 3. It's pretty good. That's the Liverpool model. Right, it's okay. You can stop Salah, but can you stop Mane? If you stop Mane, can you stop Bobby Firmino? It's that kind of thing, and that's what we try to foster amongst them. We're getting Eva Carton back, who I think is going to be a good goal scorer for us. She's 100% healthy next year, which we expect her to be. I expect her to come in and score some goals, and then we'll see what kind of freshmen show up.
One question I wanted to ask, did you notice, or if, Morgan kind of took Maya under her wing this season, or, tried to help her, a little bit? He's saying that, Maya looks like to be, going to be taking over that role almost, or it may appear to this season. Who knows what happens next season? But do you think did Morgan, try to help her out?
I don't look at Morgan as that, where she's going to overtly do that, but I think she tries to demonstrate. She tried to demonstrate this year, this is how you play the game, right? And it's a conversation that, I can have with Maya is you saw what Morgan did, the way she comes back to help, the way she does certain things. Well, guess what? Next year, you're going to have to do some of that. And she's quite capable of doing it. It's just having the right mindset. And to be honest with you, if Morgan's doing it, I don't need Maya to do it. I don't want 3 clones up there. I want to, we actually had 3 very different players up there. And really Gianna is a midfielder,
Yeah.
We refer to her as a forward, but she's withdrawn, and it's called, you call false 9, you call her, withdrawn forward, whatever title you want to give her. She really plays as a midfielder, and did a really, great job for us there.
The last senior, your goalie, very big, coming up with very big stops, through a couple seasons starting. It's always coaches always say replacing the goalie is the toughest, because it's not every team has a goalie, lined up under press. Do you have somebody that's going to be able to step into that role next season?
Well, we certainly have that expectation. Peyton Oriema has been, she's a junior this year, and has been kind of patiently waiting her turn. It's kind of bit different from Cleo, and we'll have to see. I feel good about her. I'm not panicking. I'm not thinking, oh my goodness, what are you going to do? And goaltending is an odd position. There are some games where it doesn't matter who you have back there, in both directions, because there's goals that, the 2 goals we gave up against Immaculate Heart, I don't care who was in goal. They would have been goals.
Yeah.
So, does it in some cases, or you get a game where, goaltender only touches the ball when we play it back to her. So there are games where, clearly it's super important. And I think Cleo has some games that, we don't win the game without her. I think Peyton will work hard to get better now that she knows she's the one.
This is it.
So to a certain extent, the last 2 years, she's had a kind of free ride because, she knows she doesn't have to go in there. Other than she had to go in to try to save the PK against Freehold Township, and almost did, which was pretty incredible. To sit there on the bench for 77 minutes and then say, oh, by the way, go in there and try to save a PK. So and she gave it a good, she almost got it, which was pretty amazing. And, so I feel good about it. We'll see if somebody comes in as a freshman. I've talked to one kid who's going to come in, and we'll see. We'll see how it is. But that's not. I'm not concerned about it right now because I think Peyton's a good option, and if she's the only one, then if she's the one, then she's the one, and we'll be fine. The key is having a defense in front of her. That
I was going to transition to defense next.
Yeah. Well, look, our defense this year. We had graduated about 6 defenders last year. Obviously, they weren't all playing at the same time, but we had all those positions, and the only 2 back were Giovanna Harris, who's an exceptional center back, and Sophia Rassiopi, who's a great outside back. So we need another center back. Ava Sorrentino was always somebody who I actually thought as a sophomore was going to come in and kind of compete for that role. Unfortunately, she got caught up in the COVID quarantine deal, missed the first half of the season or third of the season, and by that time it was like, okay, I can't be experimenting with center backs at this point. But she stepped in. She basically, this year was no question she's going to be it. She's steady, solid. Not necessarily going to make spectacular plays, but it's a nice tandem with Giovanna. The problem we had was figuring out who's the other outside back. And we were, to be honest with you, I lost more sleep over that than probably anything else, because I didn't feel we had enough speed there. The other 3 are fast, but as an outside back, you have to be fast. There just isn't, there's no way around it. You have to be fast, especially the way we play. And we want somebody who can get forward and help in the offense. So I finally went up to Molly Sheehan, who's a forward. She's sophomore. She's been a forward. She came in as a freshman as a forward, played JV. To be honest with you, I didn't see that she was going to challenge for being a forward on varsity, because I think what happened to her as a young player happens to too many young players. Oh, you're fast, go up top and score goals. Right? And this whole thing, oh, you can't teach speed. Well, you can coach speed. If you know what you're doing, you can coach it appropriately and understand the use of a person. So she was just a kid who, she was fast and she'd get up there, but, would invariably not finish enough for a forward. So I went up to her, it was probably going into the last preseason game. And I said, have you ever played defense? And she said, I've played a couple of times with my club team. I said, well, you're that's what you're doing. Are you willing to give it a shot? And she said, sure. So I said, listen, our assistant coach, Emily Holtz, played for us, was a 4-year player for us, won a short conference championship as a freshman, won a state championship as a senior, played lacrosse at Monmouth University, just come onto the staff. I said, you and Emily are going to be hanging out a lot together. Just listen to Giovanna and listen to Emily. And Emily will teach you what you need to know. And, she goes out and plays, and I'm like, this is going to work. And to be honest with you, I was thinking in the back of my head when I was doing this, how are we going to match up against Rumson? They're too fast.
Yeah, they're very fast up front.
They're very fast. And, I need somebody back there with some more speed. And she was a great student, worked hard, listened, learned, applied everything Emily told her. It was great. Got to a point that toward the end of the season, I said, Molly, I haven't been talking to you a lot lately. You know why? Because you're playing great. I don't have to go up to you and say, hey, you need to do this, you need to do this. Not that you can't get better, and you will, but you're doing great. Just keep at it. And the good news is she's gone to her club, and she's now going to play defense on her club team. So she's going to have all that development over the next, 8-9 months. Come in next year,
be even stronger.
Not as a kid who's hardly ever played defense, but as a kid who's got a full year under her belt with it, which means we're going to have, 4 starting defenders back, which helps a lot, plus our holding mid, which is very important defensively, will be back. So, so that makes the goaltending situation a little bit more solid. And we know, I've got kids, Sophia Rasiobi's little sister's coming in, who's a very good player, and a couple of other kids who are going to be in there challenging with some of our existing players.
You've been coaching for a while. Do you find that the goaltenders are a little more relaxed when they know they have a solid defense in front of them?
Yeah, and you could see that with Cleo this year. So in the beginning of the year, it was a little like, okay, who are these people standing in front of me? Trying to get used to that and used to what they were doing. And again, we were doing this whole thing with the midfield, who's playing there. Because the previous 2 years, we had a holding mid who was just worked so hard and made the defense's job a lot easier. So when you don't have that anymore, you don't have that security blanket there, it gets tougher, and that was a little tough on Cleo. And it was a big adjustment for her. And, I think, she would probably be the first one to tell you that, it took a while for her to feel fully confident back there.
Just want to bring up, Harris again, only a sophomore, but I mean, she plays like a seasoned veteran, back there, like, that has to, also help, being, leading that back line.
Well, Giovanna is she may be a sophomore in years, but she's not a sophomore.
No.
And it certainly helps having an older sister who is, first team all SEC, That's a pretty tough conference to be playing in.
Yeah.
And it's kind of, she and I chat a lot, and we said to her, because Giovanna's she works super hard at this. All of our games are videotaped. And after the game, she sends me her critique.
How many players do that?
I don't know how many kids are doing this. She does it. I know Maya King does it. And Maya's father's a coach,
football coach.
Yeah. So he's taught her how to do film and look at it. And Giovanna's learned how to do that. And her sister looks at her film and critiques it. And I said, well, do you get to critique hers? And she says, oh yeah, I'll do that. So I think having that helps her a lot, has helped her development, where she is, she came right in as a freshman, and you're just like, she's the best center back option we've got. No question. Her older sister, Jalissa, as a freshman, played a lot of varsity, but she wasn't, I don't know if she started much of any games in those days. We had a lot of kids who were, a year or two ahead of her, you know. Those were some pretty kind of senior laden years we had when she came in. But I think Giovanna, they're very different, right? Jalissa actually, even though she was really a holding mid, became a forward for us because we didn't have anybody who could score a goal. So I just put her up there and said, you got to score some goals for us. And she did. She was our leading scorer for a couple of years, I think. And she has that kind of ability, which Giovanna hasn't shown that yet. Not that I don't think she can be more of an offensive threat. It's just that her focus has been on being a great center back. Yeah. And if you watch most college teams, their center backs aren't going forward unless it's a set piece.
Yeah.
So I actually encourage her to go forward. I try to get. I said, listen, 5 or 6 times a year, 5 or 6 times a game, you got to make a run forward and see what you can do to disrupt the other team.
I think I noticed towards the end of the season, I saw her. Yeah, definitely from beginning of the season, end of the season. Definitely a few more runs. You know.
Yeah.
Before we start wrapping up, I got going to Molly, transitioning from forward to defense. Do you think more? And my sister is kind of pushes this with my niece, saying she plays forward for her team, but she wants her playing all over the field, because when you get to the high school level, just because you're playing forward for your club team now, that's not where you might be playing. Do you think these club programs need to, especially at the younger age, like 9, 10, 11, moving the kids around so they get familiar for each position?
Yeah, I've never ever understood why at those younger levels they're not changing positions constantly.
Yeah,
I think it's a huge mistake. I think you really want to develop a play, and this is the kind of, are you trying to win games or are you trying to develop
get them better? Yep.
Right. I mean, if you're coaching 8, 9, 10-year-olds, who cares if you ever win a game? First of all, why you bother keeping score? But they need to understand how to play every position, and I mean every position.
Yeah.
Because it's invaluable in learning the game, and once you're on, once you start hitting high school, you got to be able to understand what everybody else's role is
doing. Yeah.
And if you want to go on beyond that, it's even that much more important. I mean, I remember, when I was coming from my early years coaching at Brookdale, I get all these kids who played high school, and I remember this kid coming up, and I was like, well, where'd you play? She played at Middletown South, really good program at that time. And I said, what do you play? And she said, defense. I said, you're not playing defense for me. And she goes, what do you mean? I said, you're too slow. But you're going to go up top, and you're going to score some goals. And she did. She became a really good goal scorer, and it's just, but she had the experience of playing in some different positions, so it was easier. And I remember my own daughter when, which is, kind of the first kind of club teams I coached was with my daughter. She'd usually play a half in goal. She'd play a half, she played part in midfield, and she played some up top. She played every position, and she became a really good player because of that. And I think it does these players such a disservice to pigeonhole them early.
Yep. Yeah.
Kids come in and they go, well, I'm a outside right midfielder. We don't have that position. So what are you going to do?
Yeah.
You're either going to learn how to play a different position or you're going to sit on the bench. So, it's really, kind of incredible to me when I hear these from these kids who are playing really high level clubs, but it's the same thing. It's like they're not.
And from the parents, you're hearing it too, probably.
And you hear it from the parents as well. And and I watch kids. I mean, I'm not even going to talk about the school, but I saw a kid who I happen to know about. And I'm watching her play. I'm watching her on video, and then we had to play against her. And I'm thinking to myself, she's got some talent, but they're completely misusing her. And it's a shame because there's a kid who, could be a pretty good player, but they're not using her right. Now, I don't see her every day in practice. I hate to kind of get into, but I've been doing this long enough that I look at kids and I go, why is that kid doing that? Why do they have her playing there? It just doesn't seem to make so much sense to me. But and I'm sure there's players who look at other coaches who look at my team and go, what are you doing? But I think we all kind of sometimes look at the game a little bit differently. And it's part of what makes it interesting, to be honest.
Last question, then I'll let you go. How's it feel knowing, the All-Star game's back this season? The senior All-Star game.
Yeah. Actually, it's interesting because I actually just told my wife, I said, oh, by the way, next Friday I'm coaching the senior All-Star game. And she says, is it during the day or at night? I said, it's night. She says, well, have fun. She comes to all our games, but she's, and unfortunately, Morgan, who got voted onto the team, won't be here because she's at a showcase.
Club tournament,
which, is true of a lot of the seniors who got voted on. I mean, that's just the nature. It's just the nature of it. I'm really happy for it. 2 years ago, I guess it was 3 years ago when it got restarted. Tyler, I from Capelli said to me, how come there's no girls senior all-star game? There's a boys. And I said, are you hosting? And he goes, yeah. And I said, then we're going to have one.
Yeah.
And I just reached out to every coach and said, send me a name, send me a kid. We got to the field. We had whatever number of kids we had. And I just said, all right, all you midfielders stand over here. And there was whatever, 15 of them. I said, half of you take a white jersey, half of you take a black jersey. It's the same thing. And I just split up the team, and it was like, I'm not doing any coaching. Just going to put you out there. Go and play. Have fun. What's the big deal? So we did that. And then 2 years ago when we did it, it was much more structured, and it was,
Shore Sporting News was involved. Network.
It was Monmouth versus Ocean, which was a huge mistake because Monmouth has more teams and better teams.
Yeah.
And the final was like 8-0, and it wasn't that close.
Yeah, I left there, probably 10 minutes left. It was so
it was 8 and we were trying everything we could to not score at that point. And I kind of lobbied to go back to a different system because I just think it doesn't seem right to me that we have 10 more schools, but we get the same number of players.
Yeah.
I mean, that doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, because you also want to try to get every school represented a little bit.
Yeah, and this year the coaches, we now have a coaches association, which I think is good, and I think it's
that Twitter page is excellent.
yeah. So we're gonna try to do more, going forward. We the same thing on the girls' side. We finally last year started an all-county team.
Yeah.
And pushing more that we have a bigger input on, who's going to be all shore. Next year may be that we choose it and just send it to Asbury Park Press, and they can either take it or they can, make some adjustment if they feel like they need to. But, these are all things we're kind of working on, trying to bring more and more recognition to these girls because they deserve it. They all come out, they work hard, they're good at what they do, and they deserve the recognition that they're getting. So, so I'll be out there, and if it's cold, it's cold. It's not, I'm used to that.
If it's decent out, I'll be there. But if it's too cold, I might be home.
Yeah. No, I'm not. Listen, I feel privileged that I'm one of the coaches because it's the 4 semifinalists.
Okay. Good.
That's how they determined it. Who were the coaches? So I don't know. Maybe I'll be coaching the Ocean side. I don't know because they only have one of the 4. So, but we'll figure that part of it out. And again, it's not like I always tell the guys, you're not getting much coaching out of me.
Yeah.
All I'm doing is subbing, trying to get you all an equal amount of playing time, and that's pretty much about it. So
that's all it's about. The kids have one less fun time out there.
Exactly. Yep.
All right, Coach. Thank you for joining me, and have a happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah, same to you. All right, Nick. Thanks for everything that you do with this. I think you've added a lot to the soccer scene over the last few years in terms of doing these types of things. And I see your stuff in basketball as well. And everything we can do to help promote shore soccer is a big plus, and I really appreciate everything you're doing.
Especially, the talent in our area, people has to get out there. So I appreciate it, Coach.
Okay. All right.
Thank
Take
you.
care, Nick.